this is Dr. Karmen Smith, and I'm a mental health therapist and also a metaphysical minister. And spirituality and psychology just goes together, and so I never separate the two. So when I talk about mental health, you'll also notice that there's a big spiritual component. And during these times, we need to recognize that a lot of the things that we're bombarded with, a lot of the things that are in the media, in social media and on television, in our local news, is geared toward fear. There's a lot of things going on, and your mental health and spiritual health will have an effect on your physical health, especially during this pandemic. So I want to come to you and give you some information about how to block this fear and transmute it into something that you can actually use to benefit your mental health and physical health. So all throughout my talk, you'll notice a spiritual component. Spirituality is finding the power within yourself. A lot of people will think spirituality is religion. Well, it's not organized religion. It is the power that is in you. It is innate. You were born with it. But because we live in this matrix, it's been dummied down to control you. And one of the ways, the major way to control this power, is through fear. So you'll notice in the social media and also in our movies and our TV shows, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of killing. There's a lot of dehumanizing of people. This is intentional. It's there to program you to think that humans are not really valuable and that you have no value and no power, because then you're more easily controlled. But when you fill your mind with love and compassion and a power that can change this world and a compassion for other people, well, then you have unity. And that is something that cannot be torn down, cannot be divided, and most of all, cannot be controlled. So I wanted to show you this kind of demonstration. I call this sculpture Shrivana. And the reason I call it that is because it's called listening to God. And you can see she's listening. She's got her ear to the air and just listening to whatever wisdom is coming forth. But you can't listen to that still small voice if you're bombarded by this loud banging gong of fear. And I'll give you an example. A lot of people are afraid of climate change and disasters. So as long as you saturate that in your mind, you're going to be filled with worry and doubt, and those are the byproducts of fear. It's not saying that it's not real, but you don't want it to bombard your thoughts to where you're impotent. So climate change is something that people avoid, especially our administrators. But it is real, but you don't want to come at it with worry. So a lot of people will worry about that. They put that in their head. The next thing is dissolving of human rights. We see this over and over again, especially in other countries, but we've seen it here in the United States of America. This is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, but what we're noticing in our media and what is going on is the dissolving of human rights. There are people being arrested by people that are not identified as being in law enforcement. As a matter of fact, they're not in law enforcement. They're a private army, and they're arresting people without charges. They're holding people and arresting them in unmarked cars. This is happening in the United States of America. But not only that, but our law enforcement, whom some people believe is officer friendly, is actually, according to FBI reports, recruiting from white supremacist organizations or Aryan nations, and their agenda is to dissolve the human rights of black and brown people. So when you see this and you get caught up in the chaos of that, that can go in your head as worry. The rise of white supremacy. We see this in the news, and actually in the debate, the commentator asked the President of the United States, Donald Trump, if he would denounce white supremacy. Not only did he not denounce white supremacy, but he actually advised, ordered the Proud Boys, which is an Aryan Nation subsidiary, to stand by, and he's going to call on them. So this is the rise of white supremacy, and that can go in your head as worry and fear. Calling people non-human names. So I remember when people would call Mexican immigrants illegal aliens. And I was like, why are they calling them aliens? Why aren't they just calling them Mexican immigrants, Mexican refugees, people from Mexico looking for work? Because that would humanize them, even though that's the truth. So when you start creating an enemy, you have to name them something. It's the same thing that happened when you go to war and you call somebody outside of their name or use some type of pseudonym, because you have to villainize them and justify killing someone. So whenever you see someone calling people not by their name or respectful name, but making up a name that is harmful, hurtful, and dehumanizes that other person, this can be a worrying sign. So when you see that on social media and everything, that can go into your head. Treating refugees as prisoners. That's exactly why you could take a child away from their parents and put them in cages, because you dehumanized people. This is a very non-United States of America action. But right now it's being normalized by people that are avoiding the truth. And so one of the ways that people avoid the truth, they worry about it, but they do nothing about it and say nothing about it. And it gets swept under the rug, and that goes into your mind. Immigrants under attack. When Muslims were not allowed to come into this country, that was immigrants, people with green cards, people coming here for educational reasons, people coming to the United States for vacation, were not allowed based on their religious affiliation. When you see that, this is a very worrying thing. So these are the times that we're living in. And one of the ways that they did this was they villainized a religion, Muslims, Islam. It would be just like villainizing Christians. So this is a tactic of fear, to whip a population up so that they can dehumanize other people. And then their agenda is usually war. Attack against blacks and brown people. Because when you see on the news peaceful protests and they're violently interrupted by law enforcement, violently interrupted by unnamed forces, violently interrupted by vigilantes coming with AK-47s to supposedly defend property, but actually wind up killing people that are unarmed. This is the times that we're living in. I'm not making this up. This is the truth that's not spoken about. And only those that are outside of the matrix, looking at it from within, can call it out for what it is. This is government-sanctioned terrorism. These are the times that we're living in. And that goes into your head. The collapse of the financial markets. After printing money, after going into debt, after being a debtor nation, those debts are being called on. And the collapse of the financial markets is upon us. It's a day of reckoning where the dollar was world-renowned as the strongest currency, will not stand and will collapse. It is the end of the empire that your great-grandparents knew, especially if you're Caucasian. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of Trump supporters support the gaslighting of Trump, because they see the collapse, they feel it, they see the factories that closed, they know that their parents were able to make a living and send people to college, and now they can't. And it is scary for them. And so they're clinging to the life raft of anybody that says that they'll make America great again. I totally understand that. But they are clinging to something that will not save them. The collapse of the financial system. That goes in your head as worry. And then, of course, we come to the pandemic, where this is disproportionately affecting poor people, of course, people with underlying conditions, but people with no health care. People that are in this society with no health care because health care has gotten to be so expensive. And so they're going to the emergency room as a last resort. And also, we will find out more about this pandemic and why it seems to target Black and brown people, Native American people, immigrants. And as we know more, that may be something that people worry about even more. And then finally, the apocalypse. And let me tell you what the apocalypse means, because a lot of people are afraid and they say, oh, we're in the apocalypse, and they're so scared. Because they think the apocalypse is the end of the world. But actually, what it is the Maya, the illusion, is gone. The illusion is no more. And the illusion is part of the thing. It is actually the whole thing that holds the matrix together, the whole system together. The gaslighting no longer works. The propaganda no longer works. One of the things the pandemic showed was that the United States really doesn't really care about its people. Now that can be really shocking to some people. What they care about is you consuming goods. You are a consumer. And if you're not a consumer, then I don't need you. That's what your function is. It's not to make products. They've been shipped overseas. Your job is to buy products. And so once you understand that that is the function of the United States, it's not here to protect you. It's here to make sure you're spending money. Oftentimes money that you don't have, that you put on credit cards, that you go into huge amounts of debt for. But as long as you're buying, that's what's important. So once you see the system for what it is, then you are waking up. And part of waking up, it's called the apocalypse, when you're no longer fooled by the game that's being played. So welcome to the apocalypse. And 2020, I've always said, is clear visioning. We have clear vision. We can see what's been going on for years. And we're not going to play the game anymore. We're stepping out of the matrix and we're changing it. Which leads me to the reason why a lot of these things are going on. Because if you have all these things in your head, 9 times out of 10, you're in fear. And fear is what controls you. Once you're in fear, then I can say, well, I'm going to save you. And you don't have anything to worry about. And this president that we have now is really a great example of someone who creates fear and then gives you the solution. As a matter of fact, this just happened. So if you're watching this video later in the week or later in the year, what just happened was yesterday during the stock market, I think it was a couple of hours before the stock market, the President of the United States said, I'm going to stop all stimulus negotiations. He wasn't negotiating with anyone. He was having his staff negotiate with Congress on a stimulus package. And it was delayed and delayed and delayed, and he was blaming the Democrats. He was blaming everybody but the Republicans, of course, because it's a political game. And so when he said that, the stock market started to crash. Early this morning, he tweeted that he's going to pass a stimulus package himself. He's going to get it done, and he's going to give everybody $1,200. He's going to bail out the airlines, and he wanted to make it seem like he was the hero. So what happened? He created fear in order to control the narrative. So I'm the only one that can save you, and this is 26 days before an election. I want you to see that this is all a game. It's all propaganda. It's all created so that you can be fearful. And then when you're fearful, I can control you. And the government can control you. And your relationships can be controlled as long as you're in fear of loss and fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough, all of those things. So if you have all of that in you, well, you can be very, very afraid. But there is an antidote. The antidote is to see through the game and not play it, not participate in it. So if somebody wants me to fight with people and they're showing me all of this stuff and I'm fearful, I have 3 responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Fight is I'm going to get my guns, I'm going to get my AK-47, I'm going to get my bomb, my flamethrower, I mean, whatever it is, I'm going to fight. And also, another way is flight. Well, flight could be, I'm going to go into the country. I'm going to go away from the cities. I'm going to go where there's no fighting going on. The other way is freeze. And that is what a lot of people have been doing for years. They avoid, they put their head in the sand, they argue that it doesn't exist, they avoid it like the plague. Racism doesn't exist. No, you had a black president and you had the Jeffersons as a TV show. I mean, people are just like, I don't want to see it. I'm scared of that. And I'm just going to not participate in any type of solution because I'm going to deny it. And that is a way that fear also takes hold. So there's another way to escape all of this. And that is to get in touch with that power within. The power within is pure love or agape love. That is when you're not controlled by the fear. I'm going to unite with people that disagree with my views. I'm going to unite with people who want to make America great again. Well, yeah, let's create something for everybody, not just for a certain group. And that would make America great. And so agape allows you to sit at the table with somebody that disagrees with you. This is something that they're not doing in Congress. One way or the highway. If you get hurt over here, I'm going to give you some fear and then I'll tell you how to control it, but it's going to benefit me. That is fear-based. What I'm talking about is unifying. What I'm talking about is when you have a story on your TV and it's telling you this story, see through the story. See what it's trying to manipulate you to do using fear. Fight, flight, or freeze. And then choose another narrative of unification. This frees you up for creativity because we need to vision. We need to have a clear vision of what we want to create. And you can't create from fear. You're led by fear. You have to be told what to do when you're afraid. Creativity is born from agape love. It gives you freedom to use your gifts and talents to create something for everybody, whether that's a prison system, the justice system, a financial system, a housing market, employment, corporations. Creativity allows you to create the world that you want to live in and that you want your grandkids to live in. And it can be free of violence, free of hatred, and most of all, free of fear. So this is the best mental health. Even though you know everything that's going on, that's where your creativity comes in. It's not from hiding away in the sand, hiding your head in the sand. It's from getting together with people, even if they're not of like mind, and see where you agree. And I'll tell you one thing, everybody wants to live in a peaceful society. Everybody wants to live in a place where their grandkids can be free to create. So I invite you, what are you putting in your head? What are you turning around? Because once you master your mind and your thoughts, well, you've mastered the world.